Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
I'm Eric.
and we will be going under the sea. Dun-dun-dun. This week, we're going to be talking about the live action remake of another Disney classic, The Little Mermaid. That's right. Ariel is back and she's brought all of her friends with her. And we will be looking at this movie as well as some of the other Disney live action remakes, particularly what I think is probably the foremost memorable ones from the early 90s that have now all gotten a new big screen treatment here in the last couple of years. But remake of The Little Mermaid, Rob Marshall takes an 89-minute cartoon and stretches it to 135 minutes, adds a dose of Javier Bardem, a little bit of Melissa McCarthy, and newcomer Halle Bailey, who takes on the role of Ariel. The famous songs that you remember from the cartoon are there, as well as a few new numbers from Lin-Manuel Miranda, which probably went along well with the voice cast that we got from Aquafina and David Diggs, who do a little scuttle rap there in the middle. But Eric, what did you think of this new version of The Little Mermaid?
I'm going first on this one. Okay. I'll keep it simple and I'll keep it to The Little Mermaid. You know what? Doug Marshall did the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And with all the insanity behind the production of that movie, I still think it's enjoyable. This movie shows off what I think he's a little more talented than that. This is the movie for parents, you to take your kids, go enjoy something you enjoyed in the 90s on a massive big screen. Ursula is relishing her role, and when she turns big, it genuinely terrified me because I have an existential thing about like two big monsters, like the abyss kind of thing. There's She's fantastic. Halle Bailey, I think, absolutely owns the role of Ariel. I think the actor who played every single actor, Javier Bardem, was a standout also for me. After a while, is giving 110%. Prince Eric, Sebastian, the voice work, everyone is giving 110%. Except maybe Aquafina, who's just giving 100%. And so I'll say that the movie earns its emotions, and I'm giving it a thumbs down. Because me personally, I can't genuinely rate this movie as without this huge thorn that comes with that like me personally, I've seen the original movie. So everyone feels like puppets on strings giving their all into doing it. And it's such a bad reflex for me. I'm criticizing myself. I'm giving myself a thumbs down as well. Because there have been reproductions of classic plays forever where people just live up to the performances that have been done by other people for generations, for decades, for 100 years. Okay, if you think of like Shakespeare plays, if you think of anything like that, there should be nothing wrong with this. But when I see like a stiff-necked Melissa McCarthy finally measure up to something that was already good, I can't detach from what was the point of this. It's like you said, the additions are mostly contributions from Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you can tell it's jarring when things go into his beat and his pattern of doing what he's doing versus the classical, like more cinematic kind of tradition of the other songs in the movie. And
You mean like when Will Smith was the rapping genie?
yeah, like I kind of, yeah. Again, I'm gonna keep the Little Mermaid. I'm not gonna go down that. I'm not. Don't tempt me, Frodo. So the this movie really, I only own 2 live action remakes. I own copies of them, and this will be the third. This was the summer splash adventure that I love when it comes to summer season. This is like wet and wild and high flying adventure and emotions pouring out onto people's sleeves, and it's everything that I like to see. I just like it suffers from all of the same issues of Lion King in the sense that you animate everyone, then they can move really quickly and be exaggerated and deliver all these emotions really easily. Whereas humans, their faces have to turn red, straining to get the emotion out that the animated characters did. And it's like slow underwater movements, people trying to measure up. And then so the whole movie in my head is just a checklist of going, oh, they did it. Oh, they pulled that off. Oh, they didn't pull that off. Oh, they pulled that off for these amazing things that took hundreds, like thousands of man hours of labor to painstakingly create. I can't feel it. Like it's such a like. So I'm giving it a thumbs down, but I'm giving myself a thumbs down and saying go see it. But Disney, stop it. Like think of
Well, there aren't that many more that they can redo.
No, and but at the same time,
I mean,
I gotta wait. I gotta
I know
wait
we're
to get
getting
into
Snow
it.
White.
I want to talk about Snow
Someday
White.
I want to see them try to do Bambi because I mean, how's that even going to work?
Why? How? Like
Yeah,
it's just the same as a Lion King. They just be deer that with like voices talking over them, like it.
well, so
And a
I'm
slower
giving it.
thumper.
I'm giving it a thumbs up. Uh, you know, the added songs, I don't know if it did a lot for me. We've seen in these one of the ways they've expanded the story when they've kind of redone them is giving a POV song to the other half of the romantic duo. We saw that in Beauty and the Beast. The Beast has his own number. We saw that in Aladdin where Jasmine gets a number. And then, you know, we saw that here. Prince Eric kind of gets his point of view number, because if you're going to go from 89 to 135 minutes, you're trying to find ways to expand the story. The song that was added that worked for me the least, I will say, is when they did some kind of weird internal monologue song for Ariel when she first becomes a human, because she can't talk, where you're essentially getting every beat of how she feels about this world. But there were a lot of the things that I liked. I thought they really kind of creatively redid Under the Sea. They creatively redid the Kiss the Girl song. I thought, you know, it was interesting. I thought the underwater sequences looked a lot better than I imagined. I was trying to figure out how they were going to do that, but there was a lot of beauty and life in the way they created a lot of that. Halle Bailey is incredible as Ariel. She has a very incredible voice. I thought it was neat that they had the actress that voiced the original Ariel make a cameo in here. Even though I was looking for her, I didn't find her. I had to look it up later. She is the waitress that hands her a fork. It was the literal passing of the fork, I guess. Way to go, Disney. And there were other things that I enjoyed. It was about everything I expected. I think when you go into these live action remakes, they've ranged from adding a little something, being very good, to being a faithful reimagining, to trying something that doesn't work, to being abject failures. And I mean, they've remade. I made a list on Letterboxd. I counted at least 21 live action remakes that they've done so far, and we know we're getting another Cruella at some point here. We know we're getting Snow White.
There's a strain there that started around the time of Batman Begins, of like the untold story, like the origin story or whatever. And it peaked right around the time that The Amazing Spider-Man and Maleficent came out. And in my head, I can't 100% count Maleficent as like a remake of Sleeping Beauty, even though it is. There's like more to it than that in some way, and I feel the same way about Cruella. There's like this kind of string of
Or
like
the Sorcerer's Apprentice. That's the remake of
the
Fantasia.
Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? Which is like not at all, but totally is, but totally isn't. Like, yeah.
But they've gotten around now where they're making live action remakes of theme park rides, because we already had one Haunted Mansion, and we're soon getting another.
Okay, and we just did the Muppets Haunted Mansion, so it's like we're getting a remake of a remake of a remake, and that's my problem. That's at its core, why I have such a problem with these remakes is Disney used to stand by this model where they created something iconic and created a brand, and they would defend the brand to death to a fault, to where they did some inappropriate things in like defending things and shooting people down for using their iconic versions of public domain characters and so on and so forth. And like they're like, you can make a movie about the Little Mermaid that's not Disney's. That's completely legal. But like they take now this approach of trying to ride what's trending and trying to take modern consumerism patterns into account. And so, even though for decades they've lived off of this model of classics and vaulting them and coming out and making them momentous and special and whatnot, they literally made someone like me believe they're special and now stomp them and stamp them into repeats to make sure that you don't feel like they're special anymore.
You know, the other thing I was going to say is you start this movie with kind of a weird quote about mermaids and their level of suffering. And it made me, I was like, oh, is this going to be a somewhat darker? No. Apparently that had nothing to do with the rest of it. And it almost makes me wonder if that quote was a little bit of a non sequitur. You'd be tempted to probably forget about it because it just flashes over at the beginning. But it was a weird way to start because I thought this was just going to be kind of like the kids movie, and then I was like, oh, this is going to be something different, and then oh no, it wasn't. I think you're muted.
The clip that you showed, that image that you showed of Ariel like lifting herself on the rock, that recreation where a few seconds before that there's water splashing behind her, is like a perfect representation of what's going on, because that moment in the movie genuinely feels earned. But something about the reflex of her timing it right on the word to push herself up for world is like, oh, you're trying to copy someone. Like, I was believing everything emotionally that you're doing, and then you reminded me that this is a copy.
So, you know, would it have been better for you if they didn't try so hard to be close to the original source
Yeah.
material?
I mean, yes, and that's sort of tips me towards talking about Cinderella and talking about what it feels like this trend of remakes, the goal started as, and then what it turned into. Because I think they've just gotten like the movies that have been the most successful have adapted the animated movie into something. Yeah, like okay. So we're looking at these three, but I'll briefly going to touch on Cinderella and Peter Pan and Wendy and the Jungle Book. And um basically in a nutshell, in Peter Pan and Wendy, the only thing I have to say about it, they jump out the window and you can hear the instrumental for You Can Fly without the song happening as they get ready to go off to Neverland. You know, it's like a touch. It's like a reminder of the ride that you're on while they're doing what they're doing. I don't necessarily know if that movie's 100% successful because I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah, it's all dark and muddy and anyways, Cinderella. The original teaser like reveal for Cinderella was just the shoe, the glass slipper. And that was, I did not give a crap about Cinderella. I was a 90s boy. Like, you know, I've been being shoveled into my head that you're supposed to, I don't know, like wrestling in monster trucks or some crap. I don't know. I never really got into anything. So
I can't really picture you at a monster truck rally.
yeah, it's not really it's not really my scene. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles rally, sure. I don't know what that would
Star Trek
look like.
convention, probably.
There you go. Yeah, Star Wars for sure. Um so for me seeing that and being like, oh, they're starting something big, because they always treat these things like they're big, and they just do this simple thing and it's so iconic that everyone knows what it means and what's going to happen. And then they delivered a movie that isn't like the greatest movie of all time, but it's an adaptation that isn't just shot for shot trying to pull off the icons and images straight from the animated movie, which also is an animated movie that is extremely old by the time this movie is coming out. Now, I know we're still talking 30 years ago in the 90s for The Little Mermaid, but we're also about to remake Moana, which is like
Which makes
6
no
years
sense. I
ago.
forgot about the fact they're doing that. That almost makes no sense.
And Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, that's right. I guess they aren't running out of material. But
Well,
I
they
also
will.
I liked the Kenneth Branagh take on Cinderella. I'm with you. It was one of the better ones. Lily James and I think it's Richard Madden. You had Kate Blanchett in there, and they didn't try to make a musical. I don't remember if I think the original cartoon was a musical.
Yes.
Right, and Jungle Book also, they did not try to make a musical, despite there
Yeah.
being many musical numbers. You had those musical
But
numbers
don't
in
in the
there.
Jungle Book, I think they did add the one.
The biggest thing in the Jungle Book is they strung out an arc for Mowgli as figuring out what the difference is between being a human and an animal and its tools and ingenuity, and like it's just enough for it to still be a kid's story and an adventure. But like the point is these are both old movies. Like Jungle Book is like 70s. Like you have the opportunity to, if you have the opportunity to say something new, you have the opportunity to update an old IP, and you have the ability to bring icons to like a younger generation and do it in this way that feels like it still has a spark of originality to it. I don't understand why you didn't then just go Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and so on and so forth. And then when you had those successes and people are on board with these being big event films, then you introduce remakes of your 90s ones.
So don't you think part of it is they had already made Maleficent, so you couldn't go back to Sleeping Beauty, and they had made those horrendous Kristen Stewart Snow White movies, so they couldn't.
Disney didn't make those.
No, but those were in that time period, so you couldn't just go back and. I think that's part of it, and then they settled in one of their first ones actually, which is one that I really like, is Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. Through the Looking Glass, I didn't care for. Going back to that wasn't exceptional, but that first one, I liked what they did. There are pieces of that really appealed to me, and I think that came before Cinderella. That got them into kind of doing.
Yeah, that was 2010. And this number is,
I think, 13 or 14.
Wait, 2015? No way.
No, it could be. It was after Branagh made Thor.
Yeah, but I think it would probably be something like 13. I think that's for this box. The 2015 is the copyright on the box. So like maybe 2014 it came out.
Well, so we've talked about a few of these. I know he referenced last week when we were teeing this up that probably the four biggest ones kind of from that early 90s, late 80s is Little Mermaid, which we just talked about, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King. And I would like to say that when people say that everything Jon Favreau touches turns to gold and nothing ever misfires, try watching The Lion King. He also did that Jungle Book, which version that you were referencing. I don't think that was incredible, but it's like the greatest film ever made compared to The Lion King, which I thought was a horrendous misstep. I don't think you like any of these, right?
Actually, I enjoyed my time in the theater watching all three of those. It's the exact same experience I'm having right now with The Little Mermaid, except The Little Mermaid, I feel the passion behind it a little bit more. But Aladdin is the one that fell the hardest and the worst. So I'll build up to that. The Lion King, I just agree with all the other criticisms. I think you had an animated movie that anthropomorphized animals, and then you just tried to make them just animals. All you did was take away.
Why did they? I don't know how they can dare call that a live action remake.
Yeah, it's a lie. It's completely false. Like it you could call it a photorealistic remake, but that doesn't, I guess, roll off the tongue. It's
Cinderella was released in 2015. I just looked it up.
That's crazy that it's that the same year as like Creed, you know? That feels so much older than that, but I don't know, that's cool. So look, these are the Renaissance movies. This is the trend that they decided to go with, which is let's get all them 90s kids who are adults that have kids now, and let's try and get this trending enough to get them into theaters to kind of like use the properties and whatnot. And Beauty and the Beast, I think, is underrated for what it is, but still not special enough to have warranted like what happens now when I think of Beauty and the Beast is I think of the original, then I think of the remake, then the two of them become a blur in my head and it all becomes mixed emotions. And instead of thinking of any iconic songs or iconic performances, I just fuzz out and don't think about it anymore. And so I haven't thought about Beauty and the Beast since I saw it in theaters, even though I liked everything they added about like her mother and like all the things that they incorporated into that story. But the abomination of all abominations, only in one category was Aladdin, and that one category is direction. And I don't know if it's that they tied Guy Ritchie hands behind his back and put a cloth over his mouth and tied chains to his feet and threw him in the water like they did Aladdin, and they may let somebody else direct it in secret, or if it's that the animators were all excited to be working for Guy Ritchie, so they replicated his style. But to the best of my knowledge, I'm going to stick with just the whole new world scene. The whole new world scene, you can go shot for shot. And anytime that the camera is not like this, okay? I'm here or I'm here, and it's just floating like this. Anytime that the camera is not that far away from the actors doing that while basically a metronome plays and they give like an on beat rendition of the song, whether that's emotional or not. Anytime that's not what's happening on screen, it's CGI created by a team of artists that are not Guy Ritchie. As soon as the camera dips behind them, a cloud or something passes in front of the screen and you know it's become CG and they're flying and it becomes more dynamic and they're doing something else. The parade where Prince Ali comes into town, okay? Weird close up, but not totally close up shots of the genie running around the crowd so you can't make out what dancers are doing and you can barely see his face when he pops out and pops back in. But the camera is still this far away from him, framed so that even though there's people close to the screen going like this, it's just camera in front of actor, action, they say their lines, cut. Almost the whole movie, to my recollection. If it's CG, it's dynamic. If it's humans in front of a camera, it's nothing. And then the stunt performers are amazing. So it's just the direction, right? The CGI artist, everyone else seems passionate about it. The actors all seemed really passionate about it. I was into like all these things that are going on, but it just like as soon as I caught on to this thing, I couldn't stop seeing it. And I wish I could like color code a sequence where you see like when it's in green, it's a not CG shot, and then it turns to red and it's a CG shot. And you could see how every single live action shot is essentially the same shot. And it's baffling to me. And then there's that issue with the metronome, where in an animated movie they recorded the performances and they animated around the performance. In the movie, they played music for the actors to perform to. So they're following a beat and doing something familiar rather than coming up with something that feels like it's original or feels like it has like a spark to it. So Aladdin to me, I get all twisted up about because I loved Aladdin as a kid growing up. And so I know there's got to be some kind of inherent bias and things like that in there. But it's just only the director's chair is so lazy, especially compared to Guy Ritchie's other work. Like, I don't get it. Now, so then that's it. I mean, like,
It did continue a tradition of probably not obvious choices. I mean, when you think about Aladdin, you don't think of Guy Ritchie. When you think about Cinderella, you probably don't think about Kenneth Branagh. When you think about The Lion King, you don't think about the guy that just gave you Iron Man. Um, so maybe some inobvious choices, but I think this is the perfect time for us to give our favorites of the live action remakes, because I have a feeling I'm going to crush your spirits. So I'll let you go first. If you don't have five, that's fine. But what are your favorite of the live action remakes?
Jungle Book, Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast. I can't in good conscience. Oh, there's an issue with Maleficent. When I saw it, there was a glitch on the person I saw it with television, and I called it halfway through that it was zoomed in like this. Okay, so we weren't seeing the movie like framed correctly. And I double checked it at home when I got there, but I never rewatched the movie, so I haven't seen it right. Um, Whatever. Point is, that would probably be number 4 if I had to pick one. And then I don't know. I don't remember the last time I saw the 101 Dalmatians with from the 90s.
Oh, with
Um,
Glenn Close.
Maybe that.
All right, number 5 for me is Mulan. That was not an animated film that was probably high up. I actually don't think I saw the animated film before I saw the live action one, so maybe that has something to do with it. It's also a movie that got buried because of COVID, because it was a 2020 release that kind of unceremoniously dumped on D plus during a time when they didn't know what they were going to do with any of the movies. Remember, I thought the visuals were strong. I liked the storytelling. It was one I actually wish I would have seen in a theater for the scope of that. So that's number 5. Number 4 for me is Little Mermaid. I liked. I know you
Yeah,
just.
Little Mermaid's like number 2 or
I
1
know
for me.
you just
Yeah.
said you liked it. Uh, Number 3 is Aladdin. I actually liked the remake of Aladdin. I like the color palette. I like
At Decorators.
the romance kind of humor. It was a little bit like as if Hitch went back to the Middle East and tried to get him hooked up, because some of
Let's
the
say that
"you
again
got no
slowly.
game." Yeah, I know, but but I liked Will Smith as the genie. I liked her, Nassim Pedrad, who is the handmaiden to Jasmine. They're hilarious, and the way they're going back and forth, and the way some of his like complete lack of game lands. There were touches in there that I just really appreciated. Um, I think they went a smart way and didn't try to have the animal characters they had in there speak or kind of anthropomorphize them. They didn't. Whereas Little Mermaid, they have the human mermaid people. They still kept up with Scuttle, Flounder, and Sebastian. All are talking roles. They didn't really do that with Apu or is it Iago? Who's his, which was Gilbert Gottfried in the. You were just never going to top that voice anyway. Number 2 for me is the original Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland. I liked the casting. I liked the color palette. I know it's not popular for people to enjoy Johnny Depp, and he probably isn't my favorite thing in there, but I thought Anne Hathaway was good. Mia Wasilewski, or I probably butchered that name,
Well,
is
Johnny
great.
Depp.
There are some depth of story things in there that really just speak to me. But you were saying about
Johnny Depp can futter whack and vigorously, so.
he was funny, and it was the right amount of him, and even Helena Bonham Carter going kind of crazy as the Queen of Hearts. It was the right amount of that for me. I don't know. It worked for me. I There are some emotional beats in that story that really resonated. But number one for me, and it was pretty easy, is Beauty and the Beast. I loved what Bill Condon did with that. I loved the way they brought it to life. I thought some of the musical numbers they had in there were very beautiful. I loved seeing Hermione in there, in a outside of Hogwarts. I thought she and Dan Stevens, who played the Beast, did well. I like Dan Stevens' solo number as the Beast, and they gave a little more depth. I know not everyone loves that story, but I that's my favorite of those movies. I thought that was a fantastic film when I first saw it. We actually just rewatched it this week. We rewatched Aladdin too, which I told you about, but we rewatched a couple of them as I was getting ready for this. Just trying to remember what I liked about them. So that would be my number one of the remakes.
That has got to be like the hottest list, like as far as hot takes goes, of like anyone I know who is into it. Like it's like
I know a lot of people don't like.
Mulan and Aladdin are like almost universally like, well, by word of mouth. I think actually all of these live action remakes get like mixed reviews when it comes to like Rotten Tomatoes and all that. But I know that like when Mulan came out, it was people were furious at that movie for a
And
lot of different
again,
reasons.
it might have, part of it for me, as I mentioned, I'm pretty sure I saw the cartoon afterward, and I've only
Yeah.
seen it once. I don't, and I think I only saw it because I told my wife, "Oh yeah, I never saw this
Well,
cartoon," and she looked at me like I was
also
a
the
bad
way
person.
Disney tried to do their insane thing was pay a premium price to watch this on Disney Plus when it comes out, or wait several months to see it for free.
Oh, that's right. I think we did pay the upcharge. Yeah,
So
we did. Um,
yeah.
well, I just looked on our site Letterbox. You are correct. Like, um, Beauty and the Beast, Alice in Wonderland, Aladdin, they're all either 3 or 3.1. Mulan is a 2.4 average, which means that it's below 50% on there. I just liked it. I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
it was surprising
you
to
like what
me
you like.
because,
I mean,
well, I didn't, maybe it was not having big expectations either.
I think you're I think you're right, because I think most every criticism I know comes from what they did to the story in making it in live action, and what they like took away from some characters and all that kind of stuff. And even that you kind of see from people who watched the movie and fell in love with aspects of the story over time. They're going to get hit the hardest by them not being there. So, yeah.
Well, unless you have anything else to add, that is a wrap on our live action Disney love fest that we've just had for the last 34 minutes. But you know what? Little Mermaid,
Worth your
it's
time.
what you're expecting. This Memorial Day weekend, you have a little extra time. You want a movie you can watch with the kids. That is not something I would say about the movie we looked at last week, or many of these summer movies that have come out
That's
so
true.
far.
That's true. You got Super Mario and this if you're a kid. Like that's
I People liked Super Mario Brothers.
I know it,
I, w- I
it
wish
got like
those
word of
I
mouth
wish
picked it
those
up.
people well. Um,
Yeah.
what I feel about Super Mario Brothers, like you feel about Aladdin, which is not strong.
Ooh, okay.
Um,
No, don't get me wrong, especially when you brought up the
not
actors.
strong.
When you brought up the actors in Aladdin, it genuinely made me remember more things. I got so distracted by this element that the
Yeah,
other pieces that I know were very well done, set design, costume design, stunt performances, like supporting actors, like lead actors, like it's
it,
astounding that they found a
it
guy that
literally
looks so
did
much like
remind me
Aladdin.
of a fusion of Hitch
Yeah,
and the original cartoon Aladdin because of the
which
way they did it. Which
if they were
Hitch
going to
is
choose
probably a movie
someone,
I like more than other
Yeah.
people because it
If
was
they,
the first date movie I went to with, or that I watched with my wife.
you know what's messed up? I've never seen Hitch with anyone in my life, but I watched Hitch because someone brought a bootleg movie of it home, and I've seen it like 30 times. Love that movie. I don't know.
I know it's sometime we'll
So
have to
yeah,
have a Will Smith appreciation hour.
there you go.
Just gonna make us really unpopular. at
More
this
hot
point.
takes. Like this is the hottest episode of this week of the movies.
Well, if you enjoyed this, you can come back next week as we will launch ourselves into the Spider Verse. And I
And if
am
you didn't enjoy it, you can hate watch it.
either way, just subscribe. Give us a list. You'll find something.
Thumbs
The
up or thumbs down.
I
Just
mean,
give us one.
if you want 1 hour of people raging against the Fast and Furious franchise, that was
Oh
last
yeah,
week,
you should check out that episode.
the longest we've had. But next week we will fling ourselves into the Spider-Verse and hope that we don't have a letdown from what was probably one of the better animated superhero films I've ever seen. And we will be talking about maybe a couple of animated superhero films that have touched our hearts over the years. So you can stay tuned for that. Until then, don't get carried away under the sea, and we will see you at the movies.